Welcome in everyone to our live stream of Fallout. Another win. It's a good Fallout, right, Santi?
Yeah, fallouts after a win are always great.
Fallouts after a win are always great. I'm glad everyone could join us on the live stream. We'll get going with our pod recording in just a minute. Typical flyover timing. I think we're about 9 minutes after we intended. But I mean, that's the pitfalls and the perils of wanting to go live at 8
Yeah,
a.m. following a
yeah.
match day. Got to get our extra coffee. Got to get our match highlights and recaps in and everything. We'll get going in just a minute. So grab that coffee and there's a lot. So I think there's a lot of good to take away from this, Santi, that we're going to get into, but we are going to have to start with the unfortunate thing here in a minute.
Yeah.
How was the call? Was it a good call? You
Yeah,
had a
yeah.
Golasso to call.
Yeah, that was great. I had a feeling he was gonna score. I said it before. Oh, we haven't had a Löwen goal from a free kick in a while. He needs to give us one.
He
There you
needs
go.
to give us one. I like it.
Yeah, but yeah. I always enjoy Löwen's or anybody's goal. So yeah, that was great. That was great. He finally got one. He was close against Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's so dangerous with those free kicks.
Well, you ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
All right, let's get going. Welcome in everyone to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker, joined as always by my friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran, for another Fallout look at St. Louis City SC. This time, we're looking at another win, another clean sheet. Match day 4 is in the books. St. Louis City SC has defeated the Seattle Sounders 1-0 at Energizer Park, and we're here to recap all of it. Before we get into that, Santi, you were on the call. How are you feeling after this match day?
It's great. It's great to get 3 more points, back-to-back wins, and obviously the clean sheets. It's also great, especially because you don't have your regular goalkeeper playing. But Ben Lund did a good job. But it's great. It's great to see the team starting with 4 games. No defeats yet. Could do the same. It did the last 2 seasons where it started with a 5 game without 5 games without losing. That was a good streak, but the streaks are the streaks, and you have to continue doing it, playing well. So now we have to see what the team could do against Philadelphia Union, that is also hot.
If you're looking for omens or signs and you want to try to connect the dots, so far, any start to the season where St. Louis has something to hang their hats on as far as a streak has been positive. And the first season, it ended in a playoff run, a Western Conference regular season championship. We'll see where this season takes us because it's starting off pretty exciting. Though we usually start off our fallouts by looking at the starting 11 and what that meant for setting the tone in the game. We got to take it back a little bit further, about an hour before kickoff. At 6:25 p.m. on match day, St. Louis City SC updated their app and sent an injury update, which they never do. So you knew it was immediately bad. And it was an update on goalkeeper Roman Bürki. So by now, everybody knows. And if you don't know, then you might not have watched the match. But in an update provided by City at 6:25 p.m., coinciding with their lineup reveal, Roman Bürki was announced as having sustained an injury in training on Friday, and then on Saturday morning was diagnosed with a fracture in his hand. He will see apparently a hand specialist in the, quote, near future to further diagnose the severity of the injury and a timetable for his return. In an update provided by Olaf Melberg post-game, the City head coach said, quote, "It happened yesterday in training," meaning Friday. "I was actually standing just a few yards away, and I saw it happen in the moment. It was like we were playing small-sided games. It was a wobbling shot, took him by surprise, and he just threw out his hand in like a reflex. Wasn't really prepared for it. I just saw it straight away and asked him if it was the finger or if it was the joint, and he said the joint. But he continued training. We didn't think it was too bad, but unfortunately, there's a small fracture there," end quote. Santi, this took the wind out of everyone's sails. Going into this match, it was Seattle that had the injury concerns. It was no Jordan Morris, no Paul Areola, no Brian Schmetzer. Their head coach didn't make the trip
Right.
because of an illness. So to have this announced, and I think fans have a mixed reaction when you think of Ben Lunt. Not necessarily, I think, anything that Lunt has inherently done. It's just he's been put in with rotated lineups more often than not in MLS play as that change of pace from Bürki. But when you do that, you also historically have been subbing out large portions of our lineup. So he's never really had a good run of games with the preferred starting 11, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was an interesting opportunity that, I mean, now we know how the story ended for this match, but I mean, I don't even want to say, give me your thoughts on Roman Bürki's injury, because you can't really discuss the magnitude of that injury and what that could mean for St. Louis, because we had just talked, I talked to Tony Husband, the MLS season pass play-by-play announcer, who said Roman Bürki's the best keeper in the league. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not particularly close. Last season was down for him, but that's what you're losing in Roman Bürki. And so you can't have a 1-to-1 replacement. I don't think there should be an expectation that we have a 1-to-1 replacement. But what we saw with the defense in the first 4 games that added on with this match, I think is enough to give you hope that Ben Lunt can step in. He can do what he needs to do. And if you're going to only allow 1 shot on target in a match, it makes his job easier. But my first takeaway from Ben Lunt is he didn't make any mistakes.
Right.
And that's what you want in a Roman Bürki replacement. If you can rely on your defense in this formation that we'll talk about in a minute to prevent these high XG chances, the shots on target from occurring, then you're going to give your goalkeeper, no matter who it is, a fantastic opportunity. And at that point, you just want your keeper to not make mistakes.
Yeah, and you made a good point. When Ben Lund played before, it was with rotated lineups, maybe not the best setup, and fans have mixed reactions. I think just because maybe they haven't seen enough of him playing with City. Yeah, the sporadic play when Bürki needs rest. There was a U.S. Open Cup too in 2023, but haven't seen enough. So yeah, obviously there is a concern, but I think this game will give him a lot of confidence, and from here he can just continue improving. Basically, a backup goalkeeper, as they get more minutes, they will get more confidence, and we don't know how long Bürki will be out, but I think it will be at least 2-3 games. We'll find out more
Yeah.
hopefully later this week. But Ben Lund is going to have to play at least a couple of games, 3 games. So hopefully he can continue with that confidence. You said he didn't make any mistakes. He's not Berkey, but I think with the support of the defense, and also remember we have a great goalkeeper coach, he will help getting him ready for what's coming.
Yeah. And we don't want to get into guessing on the medical diagnoses. We don't want to get into guessing how long he's going to be out. He's going to be out a few matches minimum.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anybody any good to think how long he's going to be out, whether Lutz is going to be making another signing, thinking he's going to be out immediately. You know, the transfer window is still open through April, so anything's possible, given any kind of diagnosis. But the issue at that point, just to get it out of the way, is if you sign a replacement, you probably need to put Bürki on long-term IR, which puts him out for the season. And I don't think even if Bürki's going to miss half a year, you're going to ever want to do that. So I don't look to a replacement signing as an immediate knee-jerk reaction that Lutz is going to be doing. And especially after this performance by Ben Lutz, you're not going to say, you know, the keeper that we've had behind Bürki for now going on 3 years, because there's consistency in the trust of Ben Lund. Knowing that an injury could occur at any moment, you've stuck with Ben Lund as your backup goalkeeper for now going on 3 years. And with the amount of games that Roman Bürki has played, that's kind of a telling sign of the trust that you have in Ben Lund to take over if something were to happen. So just take a step back as far as Ben Lund goes and ride with him over the next few games. Don't look, in my opinion, don't look for a replacement signing of any kind in that regard. But Santi, we talked about the top choice 11. So let's get into the rest of the lineup really quick so that we can dive into this whole game. In front of Ben Lund, not a whole lot of changes, but the changes that were made were meaningful in what ended up happening on the field. Giannis Horn, Henry Kessler, and Kyle Hebert were the back three. Conrad Wallem was the left wing back. Thomas Totland was the right wing back. But in between them and in front of them, it was kind of a vastly different game, but not unlike the end of the LA Galaxy game, as we'll get into what Olaf Melberg's comments were. So in between, in the midfield, you had Wallem, you had Totland on the wings, but then you had Akil Watts, Eduard Löwen, and Chris Durkin all in the game to start, along with Marcel Hartl and Cedric Teuchert. No Klaus, no Betcher, and a stacked midfield. You see this and you think, all right, are they really going to go a 5-4-1 to start off the game? Sure enough, they went with a 5-4-1 to start off the game. A few things to frame this. Olaf Melberg said post-game, the strategy is not to concede chances and goals, and we're trying to have the best setup and formation and personnel possible to do that. And this was telling, not just in what their primary goal is, because he went on to cite the last 20 to 25 minutes of the Galaxy match, which, if you remember back to last week, when he made that change and changed formations up to nothing, initially there was a mild uproar in the fan base about how that didn't work and the chances increased for what the Galaxy were able to do, whether you say personnel or formation wise. They settled into a pretty good groove, but Olaf Melberg really seemed to like what he saw in that last 20-25 of the Galaxy match. The additions to the midfield he noted and how that worked really well, and he thought they looked comfortable and were dangerous going forward, so he decided to continue to build on that. On the goalkeeper front, Ben Lunt, we mentioned he's obviously in net. He said that Roman Bürki texted him that morning, Saturday morning, to say that he's feeling something and just wanted to let Ben Lunt know that he's probably not going to play. Ben Lunt said post-game, it helped him a lot for his preparation, getting his mind ready and preparing that full day as if he's going to be playing. So there's a lot of, there's some changes, but also carryover from that Galaxy match. So it's not like these players and having Akil Watts, Eduard Löwen, and Chris Durkin in the game at the same time, Marcel Hartl and just one striker. It's not like conceptually that was anything necessarily new for City, but it was interesting that Olaf saw enough in that last little bit of the Galaxy that's playing a team with a similar mindset in their desire to possess the ball. This was the formation and the personnel that Olaf decided to go with.
Yeah, when I saw the lineup, I was actually wondering if maybe you had Löwen, Dorkin, and Watts. I was wondering maybe Löwen was gonna be more like an offensive midfielder. But the one who ended up having that role was Akil Watts, which was a surprise to see him way up there. But he did well. He did well. But I was like, oh, Löwen is gonna play offensive midfield. We're finally gonna see that. But it's fine. It worked, and the team played well. And it was good to see Akil Watts in that role too.
Yeah, and Eduard Löwen stayed deep. That was one thing, is as we look to the things that happened in this game and some of our notes for it, positionally, Eduard Löwen stayed back where he's been all season long. In the run of play, he was the six. He was the pivot who was primarily responsible for helping the center backs direct the ball out. If you look at any of the highlights, just go watch the 7-minute highlights on MLS Season Pass. You can see every single time we have possession, Löwen is in that role deeper to midfield. During the game, he was helping to bridge gaps in that three center back line because our wingers were so high up the field. It was notable that Löwen wasn't used in this role, and so it makes you think that there's a lot of things in these first few games where you're just trying to get a feel for how Olaf sees the players, where he sees their best positioning, the overall best lineup, the best formation, all these things. And so you try to draw as many consistencies between games as you can. And Eduard Löwen in his role has been pretty consistent throughout, along with the performances of guys like Henry Kessler, Giannis Horn finding his slot at left center back, Conrad Wallem and Thomas Totland on the wings. Like you're finding areas throughout the field that no matter what changes, these certain players and their performances seem to be preferred from Olaf Melberg.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know people, a lot of people will want to see Eduard Löwen having a more offensive role, but he has said it previously that number 6 position is the one he likes, and it looks like he's settling in that position with Olaf Melberg, and it's fine. I think the fact that he wears the number 10 also throws people off a little bit. They will like to see more, but if that's the position he likes and the coaching staff thinks that's where they could use him better,
Hmm.
that's okay. And you have other offensive weapons anyway. And you saw an Akil Watts doing well when he was on that offensive role, and then you have a lot of guys also. There's a lot of depth. You have Thomas Ostrak that came in second half. You have Celio that we haven't seen much from, and when Rasmus Al gets healthy, he could also be an addition there. So I'm not worried that Leuven is not playing as an offensive midfielder. I would like to see him there, but it's fine if he thinks that defensive midfielder is his best position and the coaching staff does too. That's okay. We are not the coaches, and there is a lot of depth anyway.
There is a lot of depth, not just a lot of depth, but a lot of uh, different choices being made in not just the starting 11, but the lineup and the substitutions in the second half. And so we'll get to what the substitutions were, but I got to get one thing out of the way to start. And it was who we didn't see last night. A lot of the fans are clamoring for more Salio, and I get that. And yes, I want to see more Salio too. The formation and the tactics and the style that Olaf seems to be preferring, it's arguable about the value Salio provides, and that makes you wonder, where does he fit in long term? Now, 4 games is a small sample size still, but it does start to raise questions about where he fits in when you're seeing guys like Klaus, Betcher, Teuscher, Morales, Yarrow, Ostrak now coming in. You saw Joachim Nilsson return. Center backs getting a lot of the substitution time. And so this is massively different than a Bradley Carnell team or even John Hackworth, where you would sub 4, possibly 5 attackers or midfielders and you'd let your center backs ride. This is not Olaf's style. But the number one thing that I took away from this game as far as the substitutions go is that this was the first time in the history of St. Louis City SC where Joao Klaus was available for selection on the match day roster and did not make an appearance. I went back and looked over the past 2 years. Every single game where he has been on the match day roster, he has at least featured in a relief role. First time he didn't make an appearance. So, if you're a Klaus conspiracy theorist, one way or the other, read into that what you will. So
it's just one game.
Just one game. And I mentioned last game, too, against the LA Galaxy, that Klaus had never gone 2 matches in a row being available for selection without starting. So, this is the flip side of that coin, where you get Klaus and you want to bring him in the game because you know what he can add. But in this particular instance, with that 5-4-1 and how Olaf wanted to build based on what Seattle was considering to offer, or what he thought they would offer, you thought your best option was Teuscher at the top and a massive amount of midfielders underneath him. Post-game, it was asked about Cedric Teuscher as that number 9 striker. And I think it is worth reiterating that Cedric Teuscher played the number 9 before coming to St. Louis City SC. With Hanover and before in his other clubs, he has played the 9, the single 9. And so when we first signed him, when we first were looking at signing him as Nico Gioacchini's replacement, it was as a forward in the fan base. The assumption is that he would come be a forward alongside Klaus instead of Klaus, doing a similar role as Nico. So when he came over announced as a midfielder, that part was bizarre to us. Yeah. That was strange to us to see him announced as a midfielder. This is more what we expected to see when we first signed him. So I don't have any concerns with Cedric Teuscher playing that up top role. And he's a different striker. We've talked about the different roles, the different tendencies that Klaus and Teuscher have, and that they're not the same player and they offer different things. So that could be just another thing. This is another weapon in the arsenal to Olaf Melberg. I don't think that has anything to do with one being more preferred than the other. It's just cumulatively with those alongside him. What do you want to throw out there as your best chance? Teuscher with a Wallum and a Totland as the wingers who are pressing high was more preferred than having a Klaus up there who could probably do a role that is more suited for attacking midfielders underneath him, playing off of him. I didn't have anything that I took away overly concerning about Klaus, even with that stat.
No, it's just one game, and obviously I was expecting to see him on the second half at some point, but that's what the game dictated. And why force a substitution when with the formation you have and with other guys you can still accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, which is first keeping that clean sheet and second securing the win. But yeah, I don't think forcing the substitution just because he is your DP, I don't think that's the way to go. But it's just one game. I will not read too much into it. We'll see what happens when the team plays Philadelphia next week.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the big takeaways from this game before we get into the 3-word reviews and what our more in the weeds between the lines takeaways were is that St. Louis did record their 4th consecutive clean sheet to start the 2025 season. I want to get this out of the way right off the bat, becoming the 3rd ever team in MLS to start the season with 4 consecutive clean sheets, joining the 2012 Vancouver Whitecaps and the 2007 New York Red Bulls in that feat. And it's also the first time in 2+ years that St. Louis City SC has ever gone 4 straight games without conceding a goal. So notable for the evolution of this team and just the historic nature of what we've done in context for MLS itself. It was also Ben Loon's first ever MLS clean sheet. So that carries on what Roman Bürki was able to do. No MLS team has ever recorded 5 consecutive clean sheets. We are going for history against Bradley Carnell's Philadelphia Union next week. Also, just from a internal City perspective, this was a little bit of getting that monkey off your shoulder. This was the first time that St. Louis has defeated the Seattle Sounders in their 5 total matches. First time they've taken a point from the Seattle Sounders in 5 total matches. And in fact, this does mean that now St. Louis has taken at least 1 point from every Western Conference opponent in their 2+ years of existence. The remaining teams that we had yet to take a point from were the Seattle Sounders and San Diego FC. And we did it in the first match against San Diego. Finally knocked off the Seattle Sounders. It was a rocky road to get there, but that is one of my biggest takeaways. I take more pride in that, the fact that we were able to knock off the Seattle Sounders in Olaf Melberg's first appearance, first time coaching the team, playing them, when we couldn't do it in any of the other 4 times. I take more pride in that than I do the 4 straight clean sheets in a lot of regards. Both of them are monumental achievements, given what has happened, but just this shows the evolution of St. Louis, not just in the first 4 games of this season, but how much things have changed and shored up on the defensive side compared to the previous games we played under Bradley Carnell and John Hackworth.
Yeah, getting that first win against Seattle is definitely huge. Getting that monkey off your back. Also, first time City opens the scoring in games against Seattle. He had only scored 1 goal in the previous 4 games, and it was a Thomas Totland goal when the game was 2-0 Seattle in the 80th minute at Energizer Park. So now you beat Seattle, and you have gotten points against LAFC, but you still have not gotten a win against LAFC. So maybe something to watch out for this season. Maybe finally, well, you still have San Diego because San Diego is new.
Win,
to beat all the Western Conference teams, and you still have a chance against San Diego too when they come to Energizer Park. But I think it's great for the team's confidence. And people may say, oh, but Seattle was depleted. They didn't have some of the key players, but that's what you have to do when a team is depleted by injuries. You just take the chance and get the 3 points. And finally you get that win after 5 tries, and that's great for the team's confidence. And obviously, a lot of things, if you think about it, a lot of the guys that are now starters are guys who never played against Seattle, because City last year played the games against Seattle before the transfer window. So a lot of the guys that came in July, August, had never lost against Seattle playing for City. So that's also maybe a little bit different, because if you ask players, like I asked Janis Horn midweek, and he was like, well, I didn't really play against them, but it's a stat, but I don't read much into it. It's a new game, different teams. So, and I think a lot of the players took it that way. It'd be interesting to ask some of the guys who had played against Seattle 4 times to see what their take is. But it's great to get that win. It's great to get that out of the way for sure.
It might just go to show the lack of players that still exist from when we played Seattle most of the time, because I asked Marcel Hartl the same thing earlier this week, and he said that it hasn't come up once in the locker room, the fact that they hadn't beaten Seattle yet. So the turnover in team absolutely plays into that, I think. So let's look at the 3-word reviews of the fan base, see what the fan base is saying coming out of this one. Thanks to Stuart Holgren, our buddy, who always posts his 3-word reviews and gets those threads going after the game. We've got, no penalty, which that starts us off because that game was it was an obvious handball at the end of the game that we'll get into, but that was a massive saving grace at the end. Henry is king. Henry Kessler, obviously. Preki just lost from Cody Niffen. That's
I like that one.
Throwback to the St. Louis FC days. I love that one. Preki, an assistant coach with Seattle Sounders, former head coach of St. Louis FC, infamous head coach, I would say. Stu kind of broke his own, saying we have that humble swagger, but I think that was in response. It was more, I'll take that humble swagger. Hebert appreciation post. Kyle Hebert again. I'm going to talk about the fun fact for Kyle Hebert in a little bit. Finally beat Seattle. 2 straight wins. Keeps looking better. Never doubted Lunt. There you go. Kessler team of the week incoming. That's a good one. Fortress bunny hopping. Finally beat Seattle. Löwen ripped one. Fun time party. Going for records. No own goals. Yeah, I'll take that.
Oh, that's a good one too.
The biggest Ben. Ben Lunt is a tall gentleman. Well, I'll say that as well. City clean sheets, Kessler first 11. Everybody wants to see Henry Kessler in the team of the week, starting 11, and I'll have the stats that should back that up here in a bit. Clean sheet SC and defense wins games. I mean, this is the vibe that's going on. You know, it's a good time to be a St. Louis City SC fan. There's a lot to hang your hat on, a lot to be excited for. Some of my takeaways, Santi, is that this was the 3rd straight low possession match. We are now a team that's pretty consistently in the 30% range for possession in games where we are having these good defensive performances, and the quality of our attack is it up and down. You could argue really good in some of these matches, really poor in others. And so we have yet, I think, to find our groove in our attack. That's one thing. But we have absolutely settled into the ability to limit the opposition in their expected goals and their quality chances created by having just 30-ish% possession. And it does seem like you're living on a razor's edge when you're doing this. It's kind of a tricky balance when you're allowing so much possession, you're allowing so many opportunities, and you're relying on your back line to have these monumental numbers. Like, the reason Henry Kessler is seeming like such a Goliath on that St. Louis back line is because he's being asked to do so much. He's spending all of his time as the focus in limiting the chances that are being afforded by Seattle and LA Galaxy and San Diego having so much possession. So very solid, very heavy midfield, great backline work. Marcel Hartl and Akil Watts, like you mentioned earlier, moving into the attack at times, especially later in the game. The back line continued to succeed. There was only 1 shot on target from Seattle in that entire match. So they did a great job limiting the actual chances created beyond the possession. The wingers were used heavily higher up the field. And we'll talk about the passing network, but both Conrad Wallem and Thomas Tallinn were very high up the field, except for when they were in their rest defense, when they try to drop back a little bit. But they spent a lot of time complimenting Cedric Toyshirt, like I said, in the reason Toyshirt was probably selected as the 9 in that high up and what Ben Lunt was trying to do in delivering some of his service into those areas. I've also got Henry Kessler, the anchor of the back line. I'll save his stats for later, but if he's not the best center back in MLS right now, he is without a doubt the most underrated center back in the entire league. Going now 3, hopefully not 4 matches without a team of the match day appearance, but he is doing everything to keep St. Louis on this clean sheet streak. And it's just remarkable what he's able to do as the anchor of that back line, the central center back role, because while everything is moving around him, you've got all these substitutes taking place. You've got Kyle Hebert moving every single which way on the back line to cover from all these spots. You've got Henry Kessler as the one constant, the one sure thing so far, that while everybody moves around, while the fresh legs are rotated in, you've got Henry Kessler right in front of the keeper doing what he needs to do to keep us on this clean sheet streak. And then behind him, Ben Lunt. Ben Lunt did what he needed to do. It wasn't anything outstanding. It wasn't anything like an 8-save performance by Roman Bürki, but he wasn't needing to do that. That's the benefit to this kind of back line in front of him, is that he's not being asked to do things outside of himself. He's being asked to not make mistakes. And he did exactly that. He didn't make mistakes. He did have his moments. He did have his notable moments. Like in the second half, there was a moment where he actually came out of his box in a very Rowan Bürki-esque manner, coming off of his line to challenge. I'm not sure if it was Jesus Ferreira or who it was at the time, challenging an attacker that would have had a 1v1 moment. So if Ben Loont hadn't been brave in that moment, he would have dropped back on his line. He would have faced a 1v1, and that could have been the equalizer. So you could argue that one individual moment saved 3 points or saved 2 points for St. Louis City.
Yeah, I like seeing that. It ended up being called as an offside, but the fact that he came out and was brave and was able to clear the ball, that was great to see. Because that's something I had not. Obviously, small sample size, the games he played, but that's something I had not seen from him. I always saw him as a guy who will just stay within the sticks and not come out much. But it was refreshing to see that. And he also had a couple of balls that he had to punch on crosses, and he didn't make any mistakes. And the fact that he got the clean sheet will give him a lot of confidence for the next game.
And there's a question on the Instagram side of our live stream from Pooter003. Sorry if I missed it, but what is the clean sheet record? How many games? We're there. There's been no MLS team that has started a season with 5 consecutive clean sheets. Now, there might be a team that has gone at some point during the season with 5 straight, but never to start the year. And that's the thing that is the big hanging your hat on focus point, is starting the year. We joined Vancouver and New York Red Bulls in 2012 and 2007 that I said earlier as the only 3 teams now to start a season with 4. We're going for the record against Bradley Carnell's Philadelphia team next week. But before we look at all that, we've got plenty to dig into still on this game. Santi, let's talk about the passing network. I put this graphic out on X earlier today, and I posted it on Blue Sky as well. Our friend at MLS Stat on Blue Sky. It's a 5-4-1 in rest defense only. Because the passing network, when we had the ball, when we were actually trying to possess and make movement, I don't even know what this looks like. You could make about 4 or 5 different arguments about what this passing network looks like if you're trying to pigeonhole it into a formation. But you've got Conrad Wallem at left wing back at the midfield line on his average position. You have Thomas Totland advanced from the midline, so he's in the attacking third in his average passing network position. And then you have Akil Watts, Marcel Hartl, and Cedric Teuchert up top. So when we were on the ball, in the few times that we were, because we had around 32% possession in this game, we were having some of our midfielders in more advanced positions alongside our wingers. We were stretching the lines pretty well, allowing Eduard Löwen to stay deep and connect the lines, with Chris Durkin even advancing a little bit higher, but definitely Akil Watts, Marcel Hartl, and the wingers joining Cedric Teuchert in more of a high 5-man line-ish. Again, I don't even want to bother giving credence to any formation when we were on the ball, because it was just players had their assignments. The wingers were trying to get it into advanced positions. Cedric Teuchert was up top. He knew where he was staying. And then you had, more often than not, those 2 attacking midfielders in Hartl and Watts. But Eduard Löwen, obviously, his role was to play deeper. Kessler, Horn, Hebert, they knew exactly what they were supposed to be doing, staying deep. What do you make of seeing this versus Seattle, which is a very much more compact at the midfield line? And looking at Seattle, my takeaway is that St. Louis did a great job in not just limiting their shots on goal, but limiting their overall work and in stretching their lines. Like that one opportunity that Ben Loont stopped that was called offside in the second half was notable because they didn't have any of those things. They were trying to build within themselves with their 500 plus passes throughout the game, and they weren't making any progress in breaking through our lines. And that was notable so you look at our passing network, but it was notable in our defensive shape that we were able to limit Seattle to such an ineffective performance.
Yeah. So back to what the team, how the team looked formation wise. It's amazing to see Akil Watts and Thomas Totland so high. 2 guys that last year were competing for that right back position. And now they play together, and they play together really well. They complement each other, and sometimes the link-up play between both of them, it's great. And a little bit skewed to the right. And if we look at where some of the attacks, if we look at the percentages, I believe the majority came from the right side. But I was very surprised by what Akil Watts was doing. He keeps
Yeah,
finding himself as a valuable player for the team, playing in different positions, doing different things, and it looks like Olaf Melberg also thinks really high of him. It's good when you have a new coach. It's like a clean slate, and
it is.
every player has to show up and get the spot. And Akil Watts is doing what he needs to do. So it's great to see guys like him that came from CD2 having a spot in the starting lineup and being valuable for the team.
Yeah, that can't go unsaid. I feel we need to reiterate that over the first few games because there's a lot of carryover from the fan base, as there should be, in what we're used to from these players and where we're used to seeing them sub in and formations and all that stuff. But this is a brand new head coach whose mantra might be to extend what we've been doing in the high press, direct to goal type approach in the attack. But he absolutely has his own style. He absolutely has his own preferences for how he rolls out the players to accomplish that goal. And we're seeing that benefit some players more than others right now. Akil Watts is seeing a lot more playing time than Aselio Pompeu. And Alfredo Morales is seeing more
Hmm.
playing time than Tomas Ostrak right now. So there's not just preferences in the players because of what they offer on the field, their tendencies and their strengths, but positionally, some players are able to take advantage of that more than others, like an Akil Watts in his flexibility, because he didn't just play the midfield. He moved back into that right wing back after Tottenham had to sub off from an injury later in the game. So you're seeing that be a benefit as opposed to Watts coming off immediately and having to shake up a whole lot of different things. Great work and exciting to see some of these players get minutes under Olaf Melberg and really seem like they're gaining favor in a new breakdown, so a new depth chart that's kind of unfolding here with St. Louis City. And then, Santi, I want to look at the volume of passing. So passing into the final third, in the final third and into the opposition box. It really should come as no surprise given the possession numbers. The field tilt in who had more control, more momentum on the game, the field tilt was heavily in Seattle's favor. 77% of momentum, field tilt overall in this game was towards the Seattle Sounders. And in doing that, they had advantages in every passing phase. So they were not just on the ball more, but they were doing more with the ball. 53-21 in passes into the final third compared to St. Louis. The biggest, most egregious stat is passes in the final third. So once you actually possess the ball in the final third in each area, Seattle had 144 passes amongst themselves in the final third compared to just 41 from St. Louis. Over 100 more passes by Seattle in their final third when they were controlling the ball. That's arguable if it's a lasting, withstanding thing for St. Louis in how, can they continue to replicate this disadvantage in having the ball and being able to limit chances by all these other teams. We'll have to wait and see, but they've been able to do it so far. So you have to give them the benefit of the doubt, at least to start. But then passes into the opposition box, very limited amount for both teams. Seattle only had 18 passes into the opposition box. So if they weren't carrying the ball, of these 144 passes within the final third, only 18, less than 18 actually came into the opposition box. So that the area that St. Louis was controlling in their defensive third, keeping Seattle in certain portions of the field, that mitigated a lot. So it looks scary when you're looking at this passing map, seeing 144 passes within the final third. But it's almost like a no-fly zone around the penalty box area because all these passes are occurring outside and to the wings and to the channels outside of the box. St. Louis did a magnificent job overall of limiting the amount of time that Seattle had the ball in the penalty area, which just inherently limits the danger in their attack. And I think that's a credit to the back line, but also the deep-lying midfielders in Löwen and Durkin primarily in the work that they were doing to take away the space.
Yeah, and the amount of passes, also Seattle's possession. When you think about it, like a lot of those were like Seattle will go from right to left, left to right. As you were saying, City with that formation not letting Seattle go through, and Seattle just going side to side, trying to find a space, trying to get City to press. But City was very disciplined in their defending and didn't fall for what Seattle wanted them to do. So yeah, when you look at the possession numbers and all those passes, my takeaway is that yeah, a lot of those were not dangerous passes where Seattle trying to go from the right to the left or from the left to the right. But City has been very disciplined defending. And Olaf Melberg said, yeah, we need to do better with the ball, better in possession. And that's something you can adjust like during the season, especially when you're getting results. It's easier to make adjustments than if you get into a losing streak. So I'm sure the team will keep working on that, and we will see better numbers with possession and when the team has the ball.
That's right. And when you talk about the actual moments of the game, it can probably stop and start with 15 minutes into the game, looking at Eduard Löwen's goal. And so all of the actions that St. Louis didn't allow for Seattle, the most meaningful, the only arguably meaningful moment of the entire match was Eduard Löwen's goal. So let's take a look at that real quick. It was Eduard Löwen's free kick, and it's something we've been wanting to see for so long. Santi, you mentioned getting him going, not just in scoring, but in the attack, into having some contribution. On the call, Tony Husband and Ross Smith, our friends over at MLS Season Pass, noted that Löwen is the free kick specialist. And so you've been waiting to get this going. This needs to be a piece of the puzzle as you build onto the way you're able to score goals. So now we've got this one in the book, and it's fantastic to see because this was taking advantage of a Seattle mistake. It was not just a great shot by Eduard Löwen in that left channel of our attack, curling it up into the top bin, Stefan Fry's right side, but it was taking advantage of a mistake by Jackson Reagan. Jackson Reagan had a yellow card when he went down on the ball, really untouched, and then grabbed the ball with his hand to stop play. Kind of a self-inflicted wound by the Seattle Sounders on this one as St. Louis. And this is what you need to do in a game that's tightly contested like this, where St. Louis is ceding possession. They're ceding all these passes, and they're having their opportunities, but also Seattle is threatening in these areas. No matter what the danger of each individual shot is, this is a moment where you have to take advantage. This 20 to 25 yard shot, free kick from Eduard Löwen, that if you're going to call yourself a set piece specialist and have such quality set pieces that St. Louis is known for over the past few years, this is the kind of thing that you have to succeed in if you're going to change the narrative from what it was last season about not being able to finish, not being able to capitalize on these kinds of opponent mistakes. St. Louis was able to do that in this one, and it was the game changer. So Jackson Reagan's yellow caused Eduard Löwen to be able to take the free kick, scored the goal, and so just 15 minutes in, it put St. Louis up 1-0. There were chances the rest of the half. Not that many, though, because as far as shots and shots on target, you only had one shot on target out of 4 total shots from Seattle and one shot on target out of 3 total shots from St. Louis, with St. Louis only having 37% possession. And the passes were skewed so heavily by Seattle, almost 300 to about 156 from St. Louis. So doubling that in the first half. It was this one moment, and it was early in the match, not quite as early as what I usually say as my 3 moments to score a goal that drive large portions, but pretty close, 15 minutes. So you're still sitting with 30 plus minutes of that first half as Seattle's trying to now get a goal back going into halftime, and they weren't able to do it. So St. Louis formation holds. St. Louis goes into half. They're up 1-0. And then we begin to see the tactical change in the second half. But do you have any other thoughts on the first half, or just even the Löwen free kick itself?
No, Löwen scoring is great to see. He had some close ones. He had one against Colorado. Also last year, he had a couple that hit the post or were close. But I think that's great for his confidence. It's great to see him back on the scoreline, and also scoring the first goal at the newly named Energizer Park. So that's also another start for the book. But yeah, he's very dangerous, and he mentioned in the press conference that he doesn't get a lot of chances like from that distance, from that angle, and it's great to see him cash in, especially on that mistake from Jackson Reagan, which was kind of a silly mistake, but it's great to see City taking advantage of those moments to take a game that was contested and against a difficult team like Seattle.
I think one thing fans don't give credit enough for players to is the mental aspect of the game and how that influences what goes on that we see on the field. And Eduard Löwen's comments post-game were pretty notable in this regard, because he mentioned the free kick, or the kick he had against Colorado that hit the post. He mentioned that twice, at least in the post-game comments. On the free kick itself, he mentioned that not just you don't get the chance very often, like you said, Santi, but against Colorado, he called out. It was a little bit unfortunate that I hit the post and I actually trained it again on Thursday. So that was definitely a really good moment for me. And then he went on to say that, honestly, like last year, he was kind of struggling a little bit because he put too much pressure on himself. Kind of when I hit a really good free kick and it didn't go in, I was kind of upset with myself, he says. Like, I missed a penalty. It didn't help me. In the end, I put too much pressure on myself, but then I was too tense. So I was just trying to wait for the opportunity to be focused in the moment. And yeah, as I said, thankfully it happened today and that I could score. We've heard this. This was the prevailing story last year, the mental aspect of the game, not being able to just put the ball in the net and put all these demons to rest in your mind about things that you were focusing on and worried about. And why isn't this falling? What can I do differently? How do I change my game to cause this? In these moments, it's not just important to take advantage of the mistake by the opposition, but these players need this as some confidence booster, something to build off of. And so to hear Eduard Löwen talk about how much he was focused on hitting the post in a game 3 games ago, and now able to find one in, curl one in just the right spot, that gives you the confidence. That gives you what you need to build off this and know that these individual moments, we can take advantage of them because we have players that trust in themselves and know and believe that they can put one away.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Apple broadcast mentioning that he was the free kick specialist. It was interesting that it was only him. There was nobody around him. There was no doubt that it was going to be him. Like he owns that. And hopefully we'll see more of that later this year.
Absolutely. So let's look in the second half real quick as to what changes Olaf Melberg made, because the second half went on pretty similarly. There was a lot more shots, a lot more action near the goals in the second half, where the second half, when it all was said and done, Seattle had 0 shots on target, but they had 11 shots. St. Louis had 4 shots on target with 11 total shots. So let's look a little bit at how that happened, with the most notable to me happening towards the end of the game. But 62 minutes, again, this is around the same time that we're seeing Olaf Melberg choose to make some sizable substitutions, notably for Eduard Löwen, who again finds himself being subbed out after 62. But the full sub, three different changes occurred at 62. Simon Betcher, Alfredo Morales, and Josh Yaro come in for Cedric Teuchert, Eduard Löwen, and Jonas Horn. I didn't see Löwen's response, but I did see Teuchert on the sidelines, and I did see Jonas Horn on the field. Both of them were miffed. Both of them were kind of shocked, I would say, and upset in Cedric Teuchert's in his perspective for being subbed out. Like, they didn't want to go out. I assume, based on what we've heard previously from Olaf Melberg, this was data driven in what he was wanting to do, especially for Eduard Löwen, because he told me regarding Eduard Löwen last week that this was data driven. Like, they see that he's in 4th and 5th gear for a majority of the match, and when they see that he starts to trail off into 2nd and 3rd gear, as good as Eduard Löwen's 2nd and 3rd gear is compared to a lot of other players, they don't want to lose that momentum. So they send in a guy like Alfredo Morales to continue playing at the level and speed with which Löwen had been for those first 60, 62 minutes. Jonas Horn and Cedric Teuchert come out too, and Simon Betcher and Josh Yaro more come in. It's close to like for like in all 3, but the biggest thing is that Josh Yaro took right center back, moving Kyle Hebert from right center back to left center back.
Yeah, Teuchert was really upset. I got to see his reaction from the booth. He was really upset. But I think it's part of that intensity that Olaf Melberg has talked about. And yeah, it's data-driven. They see the guys are getting tired and they want to keep that intensity, especially in a tight match like last night, where you have a Seattle team that is very talented, even though they were missing some of their key pieces. So yeah, I think the like for like, and yeah, there were some adjustments on the defense. And Yaro had a good game. He also had a few clearances. Obviously, Henry Kessler is the king there, and he had I think it was like 12 or 13 clearances. But Yaro did also well when he was in, and the defense looked good. So Yaro also another player that is finding minutes with Olaf Melberg, a player that at the beginning of the season, or in preseason, we weren't sure if he was gonna stay with the team, if the team was shopping him around, but he's also showing his value and that he can be a valuable piece on the second half.
That's right. Josh Yaro only played 27 minutes, but he had 5 clearances in that. So Henry Kessler did lead the team. I'm going to talk about his stats in a minute. Henry Kessler had 12 clearances in the game. Josh Yaro, only in the game for less than a third, had 5. So in the short amount of time, I mean, Yarrow needs to get credit for that work he did. And the reason that he keeps finding himself in these matches, in these important moments in the game, is because he's able to provide this quality work defensively. He did have a few passes into the final third, so he's playing with the ball in more advanced positions. Don't discount that as part of his game, which is probably a better for his game than it is Kyle Hiebert's game necessarily. But Yarrow doing everything he needs to do as that second half sub when Mellberg is putting an emphasis on subbing out our center backs late in the game. The next sub that happened at 67, we didn't get an update. I didn't see on Thomas Totland. I'm not sure if you have one, but
No.
Totland exited the game at 67 minutes with an injury. And it was Tomas Ostrak who made his 2025 St. Louis City season debut in relief for Totland. Ostrak took the right midfield role. Akil Watts moved back to that right wing back spot. We hope that Totland, there's no issues, because that would be a somewhat of a blow for our depth, that right wing back spot where it is unquestionable that Thomas Totland is the starter there. After that, it was Seattle. Seattle made a couple subs at 64 right before that, and then at 80, changing out Christian Roldan, Paul Rothrock. And then, Santi, it led to around 85 to 90 minutes. That was my favorite part of the game when it comes to in the run of play for St. Louis City. There were, I counted between 85 and 90 minutes, there were shots at around 85 by Hartl and Ostrak that combined for a 0.61 XG, which was the most for any like individual couple of shots, that the best moment, statistically speaking, that we could have scored a goal. And then 5 straight shots from St. Louis at that 89 to 90 minute mark, with shots coming from Betcher, Hartl, Conrad Wallem, and then 2 shots from corner kicks that we had earned. Those moments, if we were going to score, that was the best chance we had. And it's also exciting that the best opportunities that we had came late in the game.
Mm-hmm.
The legs that we had were consistent. And so it tells me that the subs that Olaf was making, they withstood Seattle. And they were able to, even though they didn't dictate possession, they were able to dictate the advantages in those dangerous moments late in the game. And that was exciting to see right before Joachim Nilsson made his St. Louis City 2025 season debut, coming in for Akil Watts at 90+1, which moves Kyle Hiebert to his third position of the game at right wing back when Joachim Nilsson took the left center back role for about 8 minutes of stoppage. What do you make of all those subs? What do you make of the sequence? And I mean, if you want to jump right into the handball, which we've always loved handball calls. We think that rule is very great on flyover.
Mm-hmm.
Never had an issue with handballs in our existence. And so this was just, another great thing to see, the handball call that goes in our favor. Absolutely no issues ever with handballs.
Right. Yeah. Just the one thing. The one thing I wanted to say. Kyle Hiebert. He's like everywhere, and he's showing that he can play different positions, and also another player that has gained Olaf Mellberg's trust, and he keeps delivering. And now Joachim Nilsson is back in the mix, but Kyle Hiebert, for now, he's showing that he has to be a starter. We'll see how that competition at center back develops in the next few weeks. But just Kyle Hiebert, it's also another player from City 2 that continues getting minutes and showing how important he is. And about the handball, it looked like a handball to me, but you never know.
Yeah.
You never know. That changes week to week, and what will look as a clear handball to you and me, sometimes it doesn't for the referee and the video review people. But I'm glad it went City's way. It would have been devastating to get a draw like at the end of the game. Although I had a little bit of confidence on Ben Lund.
Sure.
I remember when he stopped a penalty kick back in 2020 when St. Louis FC played against Louisville in Louisville, and it was the opportunity for St. Louis FC to open the scoring in playoffs, and Ben Lund was the hero that night. So I had confidence maybe he was going to stop that penalty.
That might be my favorite deep cut of the entire show, Santi. Calling it back to Ben Lund's Louisville City time. Holy cow. I love that. I also love the fact that we had multiple players that I think were decent candidates for player of the game, player of the match. Eduard Löwen obviously won it with his goal. He had that goal was a 0.1 XG. 0.6 expected goals on target because of the spot that he put it on. So, amazing work in where he placed that. He had 28 of 31 accurate passes as well. So in his directing the ball from that deep lying midfield position, he did great in keeping possession, retaining what he had. Other notables, they could stop and start with Henry Kessler, but I'll also include, for me, Chris Durkin, who was second in touches with 55. He had 5 clearances, similar to Josh Yaro's 5 clearances. We mentioned 3 interceptions from Durkin, 4 recoveries. Marcel Hartl, if you're talking about a player in the attack, Marcel Hartl had 0.42 XG and 0.11 XA expected assists. So he was doing well on both sides of the ball. You had Marcel Hartl with 21 of 29 accurate passes, 3 chances created, 2 shots on target, 4 total shots, 4 touches in the opponent's penalty area, and 3 passes into the final third. So Hartl did a great job in helping to direct that attack that he was joining with Akil Watts and Cedric Toysherden for periods of time. And then Henry Kessler. Let's go back to him and spend some time, because Henry Kessler led the team in touches with 57, clearances with 12, headed clearances with 8. He had the most fouls in the game, most fouls drawn in the game. He had 31 of 32 accurate passes, most of any player greater than 45 minutes of match time. He was tied first in the team with 2 interceptions and was second in the team with 6 recoveries of the ball. Now, you're asking your defense, you're asking your back line to do a good amount of work, but I don't think you could ever escape this game without giving Henry Kessler his flowers.
Yeah, and he had 8 headed clearances. 3 of those came like within a minute, within a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Like Seattle cross. I don't remember the exact sequence, but they had a cross, header from Kessler, cross from the other side, header from Kessler, and then another cross from the opposite side, and that was like within a minute. Same play, and he keeps becoming the leader of that defense, and you have to give credit to Lutz for that trade he made with New England last year. Obviously, he came mid-season and also missed a game due to injury, and but having a full preseason and the beginning of this season showing how valuable he can be for the team. You mentioned he's probably one of the best defenders in MLS. He has been called up for the national team before, so hopefully he gets another opportunity, because he's showing he's a great defender and he's the leader of this defense.
Absolutely. A couple other notables for Henry Kessler. In fact, it was his 100th career MLS start. So talks about his veteran presence in the league as well, what he did for the Revs before coming here. Alfredo Morales, in his substitution appearance, earned his 100th MLS appearance. Thomas Ostrak, Joachim Nilsson made their debuts for this season, as we mentioned. And then one last note on Eduard Löwen. With his goal, he has now recorded 30 goal contributions in 56 regular season matches for St. Louis, 12 goals and 18 assists. So in his work up and down the midfield and his work as a set piece specialist, he continues to perform. And so it's great that he's off and running to start this season. One other thing I want to note really quick, and it doesn't have anything to do with the game on the field necessarily. Kudos to the staff at St. Louis City SC, in particular, the supporter group liaison, Caleb Leone, for an issue that occurred in the first half of the game. And I don't know if you saw it. I hope the broadcast didn't see it, but they probably did, because the ball was near this area. Over by the supporter section, there was an object thrown on the field by a fan, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
And it's abhorrent. First of all, it is absolutely terrible for any person in the stadium to be throwing objects on the field. We deride San Diego and their fans for chanting certain things. Unacceptable to every extent to be throwing things on the field. And that person, and I believe a couple people, were escorted out very quickly. St. Louis City did a great job of identifying that and removing them. The great majority, 99.9% of the fans in the supporter section, helped identify those people. This was, we don't want this to be a part of our culture, and we want it rooted out and taken out. And so kudos to the club, the fans, for getting rid of that. I wanted to address that really quick, because I know that was seen by a lot and probably seen on the broadcast, and I don't want that to ever be anything that's associated with the club that we love.
Yeah, I was upset when I saw that. I was like, oh, come on, St. Louis, you guys, the fans can do better. But then after finding out it wasn't like a regular fan, it was somebody, at least what I heard, it was someone who maybe was one of their first few games and
Yeah,
wasn't affiliated with any of the supporter groups.
right.
That gives me some relief, but it's still, you have to be respectful and don't do that. And I don't know if you noticed, I think it was Toychart. He was like really
He
upset,
was
and he
very
was
upset.
like telling the fans, "Come on, guys, you can do better." So it's great to see that reaction from the players too.
Yeah, and the players know the passion of the fans. They know they're used to the fan base and the love and admiration that they show the players. And so when you have something like this happen, you have to call it out. And I was glad to see the players take that and not just let it be policed by the fans. Like the players are upset when this happens too, and that is not something that we ever want to put on the shoulders of our players to have to think about that coming from the fans. Great that we were able to stamp it out so quickly. Kudos to the club and to the other fans for identifying that. I'm glad. I don't think it sullied anything about this match because of how quickly it was addressed and dealt with. So I'm glad that we can just move on from that. Because Santi, as we wind down on this show, we have a lot of excitement to look forward to in this coming week with this match. Now, as we're recording this, there's still 3 matches to be played on Sunday. A big slate of MLS action, actually. A couple matches that are being simulcast on Fox, as well as the Sunday night soccer match between Miami and Atlanta. But right now, and this carries in for the week because there's no matches that can affect this. St. Louis has moved into a 3-way tie for second place with 8 points through 4 matches. The Vancouver Whitecaps lead the West. If you're not watching what Vancouver's doing, pay attention. Go check their highlights. 12 points, 4 straight wins to open the season. This team is legit, and they're kind of fun to see do it as well. So City is tied with San Diego and Colorado, 2 teams that we've played to draws already with in second place. City has 2 wins and 2 draws with a +4 goal differential. And as we mentioned, they're the only team in MLS not to concede a goal this year. They're also one of 7 overall teams in MLS to not have lost, and one of 4 teams in the West to not have lost. You're seeing a little bit of early separation in this regard in the West, where just Vancouver, San Diego, Colorado, and us are undefeated and have no losses so far earlier in the season. After this match, we'll travel to Philadelphia. But what do you think about this top tier of MLS in the West that's breaking out?
Well, it's notable to see that the two, now you have to give value to these 2 scoreless draws,
That's
because
right.
Colorado and San Diego are doing their thing, still undefeated, also at the top of the table. And Vancouver, not only 4 straight wins in MLS play, but they also took out Monterrey in CONCACAF Champions Cup, playing away, beating teams from Mexico. Like at least this year hasn't been great in those matchups. Like Seattle got eliminated this week against Cruz Azul, but Vancouver is a team to watch, and it's a team that last year got the best out of City. 2 wins in 2 games, scored a lot of goals. So whenever City plays Vancouver, it will also be a great test. But yeah, the fact that San Diego and Colorado continued undefeated, San Diego finding a late goal to equalize against Columbus. It's a good eye test of what St. Louis is doing this season.
And if you look at who Vancouver and who St. Louis have played so far, it's arguable that St. Louis has played the better competition, with Vancouver getting their wins off of, it looks like, Montreal, LA Galaxy, the Portland Timbers, and FC Dallas. And of those teams, you have Montreal in the bottom of the East. You have Portland and Dallas below the playoff line currently. I know it's super early to talk about that kind of thing, but early season form, I think, matters. And the resume St. Louis is building already with draws in San Diego, Colorado, and then wins over the Galaxy, who both teams have beaten Vancouver and St. Louis, as well as this win over Seattle. Notable. So it's fun to draw those early season conclusions because you're starting to build the narrative. You're starting to see the 2025 season come into focus a little bit. And so it's really fun now, 4 games into it, to try and see as we almost end the first block of games in a throwback to the Bradley Carnell era. It's fun to draw these conclusions. Speaking of Bradley Carnell, we look forward now to travel to Philadelphia next weekend for what could end up being the match of the week. Sunday night soccer or otherwise, this could be the most notable match as far as early season form goes. Philadelphia, coached by former City frontman Bradley Carnell, his side including former City fan favorite Indiana Vassilev, And the Union, who play on Sunday, have 3 wins in 3 games. They'll play Nashville SC to see if they can continue that streak and see if they can carry their undefeated start into next week's clash with City. But this is going to be a marquee matchup to watch for 2 teams performing very well early in the season. And it's not at all the same side that Bradley Carnell had coached at City. So seeing how he attacks this new look St. Louis City offense and defense under Olaf Melberg is going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, it will be a great matchup. 2 teams, regardless of what Philadelphia does this afternoon, 2 teams coming in great form. And yeah, former coach for CDSC and a former player, they will want to get the 3 points. But yeah, as you said, different team. If you compare it to when Carnell left, different personnel, different style of play. So I was thinking yesterday maybe he has a slight advantage, but a lot of these players he didn't coach, so maybe
Right.
maybe it's even. But yeah, just former coach, and it will be the first time for City going against their former coach. It will be great to see this clash between these 2 teams next week.
You kind of wish that it was a match at Energizer Park just because of what that could mean and the storyline that could have for fans being there. But all the fans traveling to Philadelphia are going to do us proud. I know they will, and it's going to be fun for them to see Bradley Carnell's side in person. Santi, as we look around the league to finish off this episode of Fallout, we do have 3 matches on Sunday. So if you're watching us on our live stream or listening to the pod early on Sunday, you have Philadelphia, Nashville, Portland, LA Galaxy, and Atlanta, Miami to look forward to. And you know the league, this might be the league's favorite match, Atlanta, Miami, to have on Sunday Night Soccer. Not just the East Coast bias, but the rivalry that exists between Atlanta United and Inter Miami, and obviously the Messi component. I mean, they're just salivating at this matchup for Sunday Night Soccer. What other matches did you see on Saturday that really caught your eye? Because I saw an afternoon matchup where Austin beat the LA Galaxy. That was a fun matchup, really tightly contested. LAFC rather.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, tightly contested matchup. Vancouver, we mentioned their 1-0 victory over FC Dallas. San Diego drew Columbus Crew with some shenanigans again in that matchup. I think I heard that the Crew were down to maybe 9 players at one point when San Diego scored their equalizer in the second half. But unfortunately, the chant continued in San Diego, so we're going to have to see what the fallout was there, despite, no pun intended on fallout, but what the fallout was there when San Diego had been so forceful in their messaging prior to that match. But when it comes to on the field, they ended up getting a draw against the Columbus Crew, who also sit near atop the Eastern Conference and are also just a perennial powerhouse in the East. So San Diego getting a point from Columbus is a big deal, even if they were at home. And then Colorado's 2-1 victory was notable to me over the San Jose Earthquake, who continue to try to find their form under Bruce Arena. Last but not least, guess who's still winless in MLS in the Western Conference? It's Sporting KC. They drew. Now, they had a lot of goals in this one.
They came back. They were down 3-0.
Yes, it was a good performance, all things considered, but still unable to find 3 points at home.
Yeah, but finally got 1 point. The other one that was notable to me, Chicago winning away against Toronto, and that's their second away win. A team that I didn't really expected much from
Greg
this
Berhalter's
season,
side.
and they are now sitting 5th on the Eastern Conference with a 2-1-1 record, so respectable, and 2 wins playing away. We know how hard it is to win away games. City experienced it last year, and now Chicago with 2 and 5th in the Eastern Conference. It's a surprise to me.
Chicago tied for 3rd in the East with Miami, Charlotte, and NYCFC after those 2 away victories. In the West, at least until Sunday night games are played, Vancouver, San Diego, St. Louis, and Colorado lead the West, like we said, with Minnesota 1 point behind, San Jose another point behind, and Austin with 6, as well as LAFC, Real Salt Lake. So there's a bunch of teams there with 6 that follow to round out the playoff picture, so to speak, after 4 weeks. Santi, any last words about our game or anything else in the league before we go?
No, just looking forward to City against Philadelphia on Saturday.
One last note from Jerry Hayes in our live stream chat. Tell the ladies that there are still tickets for the women's watch party in the Moneta Pitch Club available. Early Mother's Day gift. That's the Philadelphia Union game, I believe, next week.
Mm-hmm.
So tickets available for that at SeatGeek. it was a good time last year, as I understand it. My wife went with some of her family members, so that's always a fun time to go in the Moneta Pitch Club. Tickets still available for that against the Philadelphia Union next week. Great time to watch Bradley Carnell face St. Louis City from one of the better spots to see. That's all we have for Fallout on this week, looking at the 1-0 St. Louis City SC victory over the Seattle Sounders in match day 4. Santi, thanks for joining me. My name is Matt Baker for Santiago Beltran. We will talk to you later, and go City.
Vamos City.
All right, folks. Thanks for joining us on our live stream. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and we will talk to you later.